everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday afternoon or whatever day it is that you're watching this. Sorry I'm a little bit late putting this out. I had a class this morning, had to talk for a couple hours, so figured I'd give myself a little rest before I talked for maybe not a couple hours, but a little bit more. So if I remember correctly, we finished up going over MLA formatting the last time. And I've gotten some emails from some of you. You seem to be a little bit nervous about the essay, and that's understandable. The due date is approaching, probably quicker than we would like. But I'm going to take some time today to talk about how to write essays and what it is that I expect. And we'll go over the essay prompt in detail and talk about it. And hopefully by the time I'm done, excuse me, by the time I'm done with this lecture, you will have a more clear idea of what it is that's expected for the essay assignment. Because remember, they are worth 20% each. So it is good to be a little bit nervous. I think that can always help. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the essay instructions, which I probably should have done this before, but I didn't. So we'll wait just a few seconds. All right. Okay, so this right here is the essay prompt. And it's pretty cut and dry, so I'll just read it to you. In this assignment, students will demonstrate the ability to compose a well-organized and effectively developed essay in MLA format. This essay should include a clear thesis statement, topic sentences to support the thesis statement, major details to expand on the topic sentences, and additional evidence to reinforce the major details. Now, I've just given you a lot of terminology there that you may not be familiar with, specifically thesis statement and topic sentences. And that is exactly what we're going to go over today, so just hold that thought. You'll remember that we talked about rhetorical strategies on the last lecture. You have a choice of 5, and you do pick one. You don't try to juggle all of them at once. So your choices for rhetorical strategies are narration, process, cause and effect, or cause effect, or cause and effect, compare, contrast, or compare and contrast, and classification and division. So you may choose any one of those 5 strategies to write your essay. So remember, narration was like telling a story. If you wanted to tell the story about the time you went to summer camp as a kid, that would be a good the narration strategy would be a good way to do that. And then you would say your topic was your trip to summer camp. Or if you wanted to do a process essay about how to crochet a sweater, right? You would explain very clearly how to do that. So you can choose any one of these strategies and write an essay about it. Now, the strategy is different than the topic, okay? Strategy is like, what tool are you going to use in your like rhetorical toolbox? And then the topic is, what specifically are you going to write about, right? So if we have a compare and contrast essay over, the topic then would be frogs and toads, right? So the strategy is compare and contrast, because that's what we're doing. We're comparing and contrasting these 2 different things. And then the topic would be frogs and toads, right? Or if you want to do a classification and division essay, your topic could be bears. And you could break down bears into different categories of bears. So black bears, brown bears, blue bears, purple bears, however it goes. Okay, so I'm leaving your topic open to you, okay? I give very little stipulation on what you can choose to write on. I would just say try to choose something that you think you could stay interested in. Because formal writing can be a snooze fest. I don't know if you know this, maybe you do. And so you probably want to pick something that you're a little more interested in. I think everybody has that one thing that they really just like to talk about or would like to write about. You know, maybe you want to give me the process of some craft you do or some special recipe you have, or maybe you want to tell me a narration of these great events in your life or the greatest football game you've ever seen. There's all kinds of different stuff you can do as long as you operate within the parameters of the 5 strategies and then the general topic choice. Now, I would say try not to choose any topic that's like really unnecessarily provocative or mean-spirited or anything like that. I shouldn't have to say that, but I do. Just, use your best judgment. I like the exchange of ideas in my class to be free and open, but I also like, to be civil and kind of keep it within the sphere of academic writing. Okay, so the requirements. Here are the requirements. You have to turn it into the proper Turnitin Dropbox for grading. Remember that. If you don't hand it into the Turnitin Dropbox, it does not get graded. You have to have at least 5 well-developed paragraphs. It's got to be between 950 and 1,000 words or about 3 pages. I would say 1,000 words. Yeah, try to get there if you can. The introduction must have an attention-getting hook, let's say, so something to get their attention, and effectively introduce your thesis statement. The thesis must be the last sentence of the introduction. Each body paragraph must have an easily identifiable topic sentence, major and minor details, and transition words and phrases that correspond to the rhetorical strategy that you were following. Now, many of you asked me about the textbook and stuff. The 3rd chapter of the textbook, Rhetorical Modes of Writing, it's titled. The chapter is titled that. That has all of the rhetorical strategies in it. And in many of these rhetorical strategies, there are lists of transition words and phrases and different things that you can use that are specific to that strategy. So for example, in the process essay, there's a lot of like first, next, then, right? Those are the transitions that are used in process because they denote chronological progression and what to do when, right? What to do and when to do it. Okay, you got to adhere to 8th edition MLA style. I need 1-inch margins, 12-point font, Times New Roman. You know the drill from the last lecture. You can see these documents on Blackboard. There's a folder that says Writing Resources. It contains all of the information about MLA formatting. And you can also visit the Purdue OWL, which I believe I showed you also in the last video. And the Purdue OWL is a great free resource for not only MLA style, but also many other styles of formatting, including APA and Chicago style, which depending on what class you take, you may have to do a different style altogether, which is quite exhausting, but unfortunately it's the reality of college. So it's a great free resource. Again, that's Purdue OWL. OWL stands for Online Writing Lab. Sources are optional, but I'm going to give a big cautionary addendum to that statement. If you use secondary sources, they have to be credible. And since I haven't taught you what credibility is, I would say it would be safe to just avoid the sources and just try to knock it out. Now, some of these strategies, like if you do a cause and effect on, the advent of nuclear power, for example, you're probably going to have to do research for that. And if you don't know how to do it, you run the risk of messing that up. So be careful with that and factor that into your selection. Let's see. In-text citations should correspond to the works cited page, which we talked about last time with MLA. Remember, you have to have in-text parenthetical citations, which usually include the author's last name and the page number so that I can locate the quote that you're using should you use quotes. Again, I would caution against it. So that is basically it. You pick a strategy, you pick a topic, you write a 5-page essay. It's got to be thesis-driven with topic sentences. Now, that's the key. That's what we really need to figure out today. So if you have any questions about the essay prompt specifically, please email me and let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to, well, let's say otherwise, you're not going to email me right now. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing, where we're just going to talk about how do we write an essay? What do we got to do? What does Professor Murphy expect of me for essay writing? So there are 3 main types of paragraphs in an essay. Many of you have written essays before, so you probably know what those 3 types are. First is the introductory. You guys are going to see what a lousy typist I am. Introductory paragraph. Okay. That's the first paragraph of the essay. It's supposed to kind of set everything up, right? Then we have body paragraphs. Now, in a traditional 5-paragraph essay, there would be 3 of these. You can do more. I wouldn't do less. Because, when you get into a 3-page essay and you do less than 2 body paragraphs, those are either really huge paragraphs or your essay is a little bit short, right? So 3 of these is a good rule of thumb. And then the final paragraph, a final type of paragraph is the conclusion paragraph. There you go. That one is a little bit trickier than you might think. So we'll just start out with the first one. Now, you've got a textbook, right? It's available on Blackboard, and you can go check it out if you like. And this textbook will tell you all the parts of writing an essay just as well as I can. But I do have a little formula that helps me for remembering introductory paragraphs, and I think it's pretty useful. So some of you are fishermen, I assume, or fisherwomen, and you've probably heard this expression, hook, line, and sinker. You've probably heard that expression used in common speech. It usually means like if you got someone hook, line, and sinker, it means you duped them completely or you pulled one over on them. Man, I got that guy hook, line, and sinker. I sold him the truck with the faulty transmission, right? But that's not really how we mean it today. I'm just using this as an analogy to help us understand how to write intro paragraphs, right? So what do I mean by hook? Hook is a strong attention getter, okay? So the problem with formal writing, and I know this better than anyone, is that it's a bit of a snooze fest from time to time. You write these essays and it's very technical and very methodic and it's not much room to play around or be funny and it can get kind of boring. So how do we help get people invested in our writing? Well, one of the things you have to do is you have to catch their attention right from the start. You have to give people a reason to keep reading, right? Especially if you were writing in an academic setting and you were just producing articles for a scholarly journal, people are going to be flipping through those journals and they may read the first couple of lines of your essay, maybe read the abstract. If they don't like what they see, they're going to keep going. So you really got to make sure you have a strong hook or attention getter. So how do we create a strong hook or attention getter? Well, there are several things that you can do. You can use a vivid description related to the topic and strategy. Okay, vivid descriptions, maybe descriptions that people can relate to. So let's say you were going to do a narration story about the time you got stranded on the side of the road for 13 hours. You could start that essay by going, have you ever been in a situation where you felt completely hopeless by the roadside and no one was there to help you? Have you ever been tired, cold, and hungry and waiting for the person to show up to save the day and knowing that there's a chance they may not find you? These are the kinds of things you could say, wow, maybe I haven't been through that, but that sounds really harrowing and kind of interesting. I'm going to keep reading and see what this person has to say. That's one way of doing it. Maybe you give some specific, or if you were writing a compare and contrast essay about working at different types of fast food restaurants, you could give people a vivid description of what it's like to work in a fast food restaurant with the grease fryers at 350 degrees and the loud kitchen appliances and the obnoxious bosses screaming in your ear, right? So a vivid description related to the topic and strategy is a great way to do it. The next way to do it is shocking and or otherwise provocative factual information about the topic. I had a student once that when we got to the second essay, the argumentative essay, she was looking for a topic and she couldn't find one. And we kept talking, trying to figure out how she could come to a topic that she was comfortable writing about. And eventually she decided that she was going to address the blood shortage. I may have mentioned this in my lecture the other day. I'm not sure if I did or not. There is a blood shortage in terms of donating blood for people to use in operations, everything. And this student worked in a proximal relation to the healthcare industry. So she was really familiar with this blood shortage. And she knew a lot of really shocking statistics that I didn't know. For example, one of the things that she said was that most people are not qualified to give blood, which I didn't know. And so it makes it that much more important that the people who are qualified to give blood do give blood. And so she used this piece of information, which she was able to verify, as a way of hooking my attention and getting me to go, wow, really? I had no idea that most people couldn't donate blood. What are we going to do about this blood problem? And I kept reading, right? So that's a good way, shocking and or provocative factual information about the topic. Another good way to start off a good hook is a strong quote. Now, this one, I'm going to put our handy-dandy little asterisk here, meaning please be careful. Problem is that a lot of the times quotes are garbage on the internet. There are lots of quotes on the internet that just aren't true. In fact, there's a website called fakebuddhaquotes.com or something like that that's got all of these quotes from Buddha that Buddha didn't say. And the person has gone through and like compared the quotes that they found on the internet to the texts and the historical accounts of Buddha's life, and have basically been able to demonstrate that there are innumerable quotes that the Buddha never said and which are misattributed to him. The same is true for Einstein. There's all kinds of quotes for Einstein that he didn't say. So if you do use a quote like an inspirational or something catchy or something compelling, make doubly sure that it is real, right? And be careful of the website you use, because, brainyquotes.com, I don't know, folks. I don't know if those are all real. Who's vetting this stuff, right? Who's sitting in the room making sure that these quotes are real and that they come from a verifiable source? You don't know, so you have to be really careful. However, quotes can be a good way to draw people into the piece, to get people invested. So that's just another thing that you can do if you decide. These are not the only ways to get a hook going. There are other ways, and maybe you have a creative means of creating a good hook. But the main thing I would say is that you want to make sure the hook relates to the topic and the strategy specifically, right? Don't do these big broad hooks like, have you ever been so confused that you didn't know what to do with your life? That's not a really good hook, because I don't know what you're going to write about. I can't tell from reading that what the essay is on, and it's just very broad and very general. I mean, of course I've wondered things like that, so it doesn't really help. Try not to get too broad. Be very specific, relate to the topic and strategy, and consider using one of these potential methods of hooking people's attention. Okay. I'm going to take a sip of beverage here. Just give me one moment. By the way, I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. I'm really sorry that I don't get to see you in person. Hopefully you can email me if you want to ask me any questions, and I am approachable, I swear. Okay, the line. So what is the line section? The line section is any and all relevant contextual information that is needed to establish the thesis statement, which we have not covered yet, but that's coming up. So what do I mean by contextual information? Well, that's all of the big picture stuff, right? So you think about, like, you're going to paint a picture for your reader, and you got to assume that maybe your reader isn't as familiar with the subject as you are. In fact, in most cases, they're not going to be, because you're the one writing the essay, right? So if you were writing about comparing and contrasting different types of video games, like PC games and console games, your line section would be like maybe an explanation of the history of PC gaming, like when did it start, when did console gaming start, how are they kind of like rivaling each other and sort of fighting for this like space of gamer interest, and that kind of thing. Or if you were doing a compare and contrast essay on roundworms versus flatworms, you might want to talk about like the different habitats they might be in and where they're found all over the world, and what exactly the scientific definition of flatworm is versus roundworm and that sort of thing. And just, anything that you need to set up the thesis. Now, you don't want to go too into detail and like put a bunch of quotes and a bunch of cited references and stuff in the intro, because you want to save all that stuff for the body paragraphs, right? But the line section is like, what do I need to know so that this will make sense, right? What do I need to know so that I'm not going, wait, what are they talking about? What's this about? Lead me in, let me know any of the minute details that I might not already know about, and set up the last thing, which is the sinker, or the thesis statement. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so the thesis statement. Many of you have written essays before, and you know thesis statements. If I had to put it in just simple terms, I would say it is the main idea of the essay. Okay, that's the general notion. Now, the thing about the thesis statement, I'm going to use this. This is from an old nursery rhyme, "The cheese stands alone, the cheese stands alone." Most people don't know it, and I seem really old and stupid for saying it. But I say the cheese stands alone. What I mean by that is the thesis must stand on its own as a complete microcosm of the entire essay. Okay. Apparently that's not hyphenated. I don't know why I did that. Okay. So think about like what is the entire sentence, the entire essay boiled down into one, maybe two sentences. So it's kind of tough. Like you think about a thesis statement, you're like, oh, big deal, it's just one sentence. No, you have to take the entire essay and boil it, condense it down into one, maybe two sentences. Other things about the thesis, always located at the end of the intro paragraph. Always located at the end of the intro paragraph, okay? And so if we do the virtual roasting, which we do, and you watch the virtual roast and you go, wait, that wasn't my thesis statement. I always take the sentence that is the last sentence of the intro. If you don't put your thesis where it goes, I'm not going to get it right in the roast workshop. So please be careful about that. It's always located at the end of the intro paragraph, one, maybe two sentences. Usually gives some indication of how the essay will be structured. And I'm going to put in parentheses here subpoints, okay, because that's usually a good way to do it. So I'll give an example. Here's an example thesis. Now I'm going to do compare and contrast. I'm going to do frogs and toads. Frogs and toads, okay? That's my topic, comparing and contrasting frogs and toads. So here's my thesis statement. Frogs and toads are two types of amphibians with key differences in the areas of morphology, that's like how they look, habitat, and diet. Okay. So, great thesis. Does the cheese stand alone? Yes, I know everything that this essay is going to be about. What is it going to be about? It's going to be a compare and contrast essay over frogs and toads. What are we going to compare and contrast about? We're going to do it on morphology, habitat, and diet. All right? So those are the subpoints. Now, looking at that one sentence right there, I already know the entire essay. I know what it's going to be about. It's been condensed, right? So this is really what you're looking for in a thesis statement. You conform to the strategy, and then you generate a thorough, specific statement that puts the entire paper into focus, all right? With the subpoints that let us know how the essay will progress. So that's essentially a thesis statement. Let me see if I've got any other points on there. It should be obvious what strategy you're using just by looking at the thesis statement. Yeah, and you want to use subpoints. So that's basically all of the that's all the stuff I got for the thesis statement. Now, that is your intro paragraph. That's your hook, line, and sinker. Okay, hook, strong attention getter. Okay, then we have some possible ways that we can do that. Line, any and all relevant contextual information that is needed to establish the thesis statement. No more, no less, right? You got to get that Goldilocks spot going, right? Just right. Sinker, the thesis statement, the main idea of the essay. Some rules about the thesis statement. The cheese stands alone. The thesis must stand on its own as a complete microcosm of the entire essay. It must be one, maybe two sentences. It is always located at the end of the intro paragraph. Usually gives some indication of how the essay will be structured, and including subpoints. And then we have an example thesis. Frogs and toads are two types of amphibians with key differences in the area of morphology, habitat, and diet. All right. So we have our intro, or at least we know what to do when we start the intro paragraph. What are we going to do about the body paragraphs? Well, this is where the next term that's very important comes into play, and that is topic sentence. Topic sentence. So what is a topic sentence? It's a microthesis. It's small or focused main idea for the body paragraph. All right? So it will always relate to the thesis, but will be more targeted or focused. All right, so if the thesis is broad, the topic sentence is going to be a little bit more specific. So let's go back to our frogs and toads. Now, we laid out 3 subpoints. The first one had to do with morphology, which, again, morphology is like how are they formed? How do they look? So you think about what are the differences between frogs and toads in terms of morphology. Although frogs and toads may look similar at first glance, you will notice differences in the skin, the presence of venom glands, and the, let's see, you got to come up with this stuff on the spot. Differences in the skin, presence of venom glands, and what's the other thing? Oh, and coloration. Usually toads are kind of an earthy color. If you know about toads, toads are usually land-bound. They do spend some time in the water as larvae, but then they leave the water and they live most of their life on land, whereas a frog would live pretty much all of its life near water, although maybe not in it all the time. So they are different, and that calls for different coloration. Frogs are often colored like, green algae and stuff, and toads are sometimes earth colors, right? So, all right, we got all of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this body paragraph, right? It's very specific. It's very targeted. What are we going to talk about? Well, first we're going to talk about the skin, then we're going to talk about the venom glands, and then we're going to talk about the coloration, right? It's a topic sentence. Does it relate directly to the thesis statement that we made? Sure does. Is it specific? Yes. Is it a microcosm of the thesis? Yes. So all of the bases are hit there, okay? That is a good example of a topic sentence. So let's do another one. Let's see. The next one is habitat. While both frogs and toads spend a portion of their lives in water, toads eventually leave the aquarian no, that's not good. Leave the aquatic world to venture into less hospitable terrain. Okay, so that's just another example of how you might generate the next topic sentence. We won't go too much more into detail. Those are your topic sentences. So what comes after topic sentences? Well, after your topic sentences, you're going to need supporting details. Supporting details, okay? So you're just basically going to flesh out the paragraph. You're going to fill it in. It's important to use transition words to help with the flow of these supporting details, right? Because if you think about a paragraph is not just a group of sentences. It's a group of sentences acting as a cohesive unit, right? So in order for a paragraph to be really good, it has to be linked together. It has to have these transition words which help with the flow, okay? So you're going to need to use transition words. Now, where do you find the transitions words that you might need to use? Well, in your textbook, each section on the rhetorical strategies, in some instances, they give you a table of the transition words that are applicable to that specific strategy. So if you think about like process is very important to think about chronology, like what happens first, right? First, next, then. So these are chronological transitions, right? They help with the process strategy, or maybe with narration, right? That might also help. So check out that textbook, right? Every time you do a quiz, there's a little section that you read. There's also some supporting videos. Check that stuff out. It doesn't take long. It'll show you the proper transition words, and it'll give you a more clear perspective of what that means. So supporting details. Well, the main thing is you want to keep the topic sentence in focus. You don't want to go off track. Do not go off topic. So if you focus on that topic sentence and you keep that in your sights, you will be locked into that theme for the duration of that paragraph. So if you were talking about frogs and toads and their habitat, you wouldn't want to just randomly start talking about salamanders, right? And then go off on some tangent about salamanders for 5 lines, because that's not what was set up in the topic sentence. So the structure of this stuff is very important. The thesis and the topic sentences lock you in to specific things in specific places in your essay, right? Your thesis is going to lock you in terms of the entire argument and what you can cover. Your topic sentences are going to lock you in terms of what that paragraph will address. So make sure that you don't get ahead of yourself, that you don't start talking about things that are off topic. And the best way to do that is to keep that main topic sentence in your sights. Keep focused on it. So, I mean, we could do examples. Let's see. Examples of toads' habitats, toads and frogs. While frogs are given an advantage by living near water, toads also target untapped areas by venturing onto dry land. Toads are much better at surviving dry spells. Their thick skin prevents them from drying out like a frog would if it attempted to go into a desert or something. Okay. However, toads are not the greatest swimmers, and so the aquatic world might actually be dangerous to them once their larval stage is complete. Okay, so you see how that goes, right? I'm not going to go on too much with that, but we're just filling in supporting details, explaining the topic sentence. So this was our topic sentence. While frogs and toads both spend a portion of their lives in water, toads eventually leave the aquatic world to venture into less hospitable terrain. While frogs are given an advantage by living near water, toads also target untapped areas by venturing onto dry land. Toads are much better at surviving dry spells, as their thick skin prevents them from drying out like a frog would if attempted to go into the desert. However, toads are not the greatest swimmers, and so the aquatic world might actually be dangerous to them once their larval stage is complete. So these are just supporting details, helping explain that topic sentence in a little more clarity, going into more detail, and also providing transitions like however to help with the flow of the paragraph. Okay, so what's the last thing that you need? The good transition, right? That's where you transition. Now, that's not a transition word. This is a transition sentence at the end of the paragraph, all right? You guys are noticing that I'm a terrible typist. I cannot type to save my life. I think it's because my long fingers, they get in the way. I'll just make that excuse. How about that? So transition sentence at the end of the paragraph. So a good transition sentence might be, despite these differences in environmental locality. Frogs and toads still eat many of the same creatures. All right, so that's a transition because remember our next thing we're going to talk about their diet. So I'm using this sentence right here to say, hey, okay, we're done talking about environmental locality. Now we're going to move into their diet, and there's some similarities there. They eat a lot of the same stuff. So that's a transition sentence, and that's what you need as the last part of the body paragraph. So once you do this, you repeat it, lather, rinse, repeat 3 times, 3 body paragraphs. Now what do? Well, you got the dreaded conclusion. So what exactly do we do for the conclusion paragraph? So I want to preface this by saying that you've probably taken English classes in the past, and maybe your English teacher told you that the conclusion is where you should restate or repeat the argument that you already made. I don't necessarily agree with this approach, and English is one of those disciplines where professors are going to disagree with each other more commonly than other disciplines, right? Because the rules are sort of not as concrete. They are, but they aren't. There are things that everybody does, and then there are variations between professors. This isn't really the case with physics and math, as there's only one right answer, right? But there's not always one right answer in English. So what I want to do is tell you that my preference is that you not do the following, and this is probably what you've been told to do. So do not restate the argument. What? I thought that's what you do. You finish the essay and then you restate everything. Well, let me ask you this. Why? Why do you do that? Because if you think about it, I just spent the better part of 3 pages, I would hope, reading your argument. Why do I need to see it restated, right? And in fact, in many instances, this leads to redundancy, right? I'm just like, wow, I have really already heard this before. This is boring. This guy is, or this person is literally just restating everything they've already said. So how then do you avoid doing this? Well, there are a couple of things you need to do. Tone of closure. What is a tone of closure? So the way I describe a tone of closure is you think that you're like, imagine watching someone give a speech, right? And they're giving a speech, and they're giving a speech, and all of a sudden they start to say, and so, as you can see, the evidence clearly points in this direction. And if I am given the opportunity, right? And when people hear that, they start packing up their bags, and the crowd starts rustling around. Why are they doing that? Because they can hear the tone of closure. They know, based on the style of speech, the delivery of the oration, they know that the speech is wrapping up. It's going to be done soon. So a tone of closure is what you're aiming for. You want to give the reader the sense that you have closed the loose ends, you have put the ribbon on the bow, and you have put it under the tree for the children to find. So that's one thing. Number 2, it is the least important and most difficult. All right. And the reason I say this is because I do get people that they really, really give themselves a headache over the conclusion. But if I had to give you advice as to where you should spend most of your energy should be spent on the thesis and topic sentences. The conclusion is important. It's not vital to the argument. And in fact, in most cases, you could probably leave the conclusion off, and it may be weird, like, why did this just stop? But it might not change too much about what you understand, right? It's sort of I won't say it's unnecessary, but it's not as important as the body paragraphs for sure. So you can also address open-ended things or possibilities, right? So let's say we were doing, remember the blood essay. Let's go back to the topic of the blood shortage. Okay, open-ended possibilities. What would happen if what's going to happen if people don't start giving more blood, right? As the population grows and more people need blood and fewer people are getting it, what's it going to look like? You can predict the future. You have a little more freedom in the conclusion than you do in the other paragraphs. In the other paragraphs, you're confined by the thesis and topic sentence. In the conclusion, you're given a little more wiggle room. You can predict things, right? If you were doing a cause and effect paragraph on nuclear energy, you could predict what the future would look like if we invested 100% in nuclear energy. You could predict what could possibly go wrong from a future like that, right? So you got a lot of freedom. You just really don't want to repeat yourself. Avoid redundancy. Provide a total of closure. You can address open-ended things or possibilities. Leave your reader thinking, wow, that was really compelling. They're right. It could go this way. Or I hadn't really thought about that. If you achieve that effect in your conclusion, you've done a good job. So those are the 3 types of paragraphs that you can expect to deal with in your essay. Okay. Excuse me. Allergies are acting up, I believe. Okay. So what I'm going to do then, let's see, we've covered hook, line, and sinker. We covered thesis and topic sentences and supporting details. Let's see what else. We're going to practice process and narration. All right. So practicing process. We're going to start a new Word document for that. All right. So Times New Roman, 12-point font. We'll just set it up like an essay. So a couple of things we need. We need the header and the heading. So a way to do the header, this is the, I think it's header. I always get them mixed up. I think it's header. The page number. So you go over here to insert in your handy dandy word processor. By the way, I hope you've downloaded Microsoft Word. I did send out the link for it, so hopefully you've done that. Page number, top of page, all the way to the right. Okay? Well, hang on. Well, I acted all triumphant and then I did it wrong. Insert. I think I put it at the bottom of the page instead of the top. Page number, top of page, all the way to the right. Boom, there we go. Okay, so now you got to go in and type your last name in front of there. Murphy. All right, now that's not your last name, that's mine. So don't forget your last name. Then we're going to highlight that and go home. Make sure it is Times New Roman. That is the font that we use for the essay. Make sure it is 12-point font. Good deal. Okay. Then we need the heading. So that's going to be your name. Now in this case, that's Brian Murphy. Whoop. Hold on, it's Calibri. Got to make sure it's Times New Roman. Can't get ahead of ourselves. Brian Murphy. All right. Now it's not double space, so let's go ahead and do that. Paragraph, line spacing, double. Boom. All right. Brian Murphy. Now we need the professor's name, which I'm the professor, so we'll make up a name. Professor Elmer Dinkley. All right. Cool. Next, we need the course and number, so that's going to be English 1101. And then we need the date European style, which today is the 7th of June in the year of our Lord 2021. Okay, good. Cool. That's your heading. All right. Now what do you need? Well, you need a fancy title. Okay? Fancy title. So we got to decide now what we're going to write about. We're doing I said we're practicing narration and process. Probably we should practice process first. So let's do, and I hate that we're not having an actual class for this because this is a really fun discussion. Every time I do this with a seated class, we do the process of making ramen noodles. Now, ramen noodles is a very sensitive subject for a college student, right? This is a staple in many of your diets, and it was in mine when I was a college student as well. I ate my fair share, believe me. So we're going to do that. We're going to do ramen noodles. Now we need a title. Think about the title. The way you should think about the title is part of your hook. It's like an extension of the hook. It's something that you're using to get people's attention. A really lame title is going to really just be like, wow, what is this? I don't even want to mess with this. SA1 is the worst title I've ever gotten. SA1. That's not going to help us, right? Because we need to know some details. The best way to do a title is the title and subtitle format, right? So, Nifty Noodles. How to prepare. Oh, wait. Thrifty Nifty Noodles. Oh, man, I'm so clever. Thrifty Nifty Noodles. How to prepare ramen the affordable way. I mean, I'm pretty sure ramen is affordable. There's probably a way to make it expensive. You know, people put gold leaf in their ramen or something. If you ever watch those ridiculous food shows, all the places that color their hamburger buns with squid ink and put gold leafing in the hamburger, it's just excessive and ridiculous. But, you know, that's the world we live in. All right, cool. So you notice we got the title subtitle format. This would be the title, Thrifty Nifty Noodles. And this is the subtitle, How to Prepare Ramen the Affordable Way. So we know, hey, this is kind of catchy because this alliteration here is kind of fun, thrifty nifty. But also we know what the essay is going to be about. Like we can discern, oh, this is going to be an essay about how to prepare ramen noodles, which means it's a process essay, right? Okay. So now we need a hook. How do we do it? How do we hook people into ramen noodles? Well, ramen noodles is as I said, the staple college student food. It is when you think of ramen noodles, you think of budgetary food consumption. So give me a perspective of what it's like to be a college student who needs to eat, right? Imagine sitting at home, sitting in your dorm room the night before a major exam. You go to the refrigerator. That's not how you spell that. See, the autocorrect has ruined me too, folks. Don't worry. Refrigerator. For the last slice of pizza, only to find that your greedy roommate has eaten it themselves. As the hunger pains set in, you know there's only, we don't want to use contractions in formal writing, there's only one option. Ramen, or we'll say top ramen. Boom. Okay, there's your hook, right? That's a pretty good hook because you know why? Because you gave someone an empathetic connection to the situation that makes ramen noodles a good thing. All right. So what do we need now? We need supporting details. What supporting details do we need for ramen noodles? Well, ramen noodles are among the cheapest food that a student can buy at any grocery and or corner store all over the world. At less than 25 cents a packet, this affordable carbohydrate can be supplemented with other add-ons to make it more nutritionally valuable to consume. All right, just a few more words, a few more details. Moreover, it can be made almost anywhere that contains a working microwave and or stove, making it one of the most versatile quick meals in existence. All right. So now that's pretty good. I mean, you could go a little bit further. Remember, you got to get to 1,000 words. So maybe you want to give some more details, but you also don't want to get too far ahead of yourself in the intro. You just want to provide enough for me to understand what's up. Now, I clearly get that you're talking about ramen noodles and their value to the college student and how to prepare them. So I don't know that we really need that much more here for this to make sense. Okay, so now we're going to move into the sinker, or the thesis statement. And wonderful, they're going to start a pressure washer right outside my window. So what is the thesis statement? Well, what I've noticed is that it's best to go broad with this one because everyone disagrees with how to make ramen. If you think about it, you start from the beginning. What do you use to cook it? Some people, they're all about the microwave. Some people, the stove is the only way to do it because microwaves are somehow undesirable. Whatever you prefer, I think it's best for the exercise that we just kind of keep it broad. So when you think about process, remember, it's important to list the steps in chronological order so that they can be repeated. In the case of the thesis statement, you'll want to have those steps listed as subpoints in order for that flow to make sense. So, example thesis, to prepare top ramen, preparing top ramen can be accomplished in just 3 easy steps. Preparation, cooking, and the plating or serving step. Boom. Okay, pretty good, right? We got our 3 steps. All right, so what do you do next? You finish your introduction. You got your hook. You got your line. You got your sinker. What do you do next? Well, you need a topic sentence, and it's important that you do it in this order because you can't just go off and just write stream of consciousness, whatever comes to your head about ramen noodles. You got to have some structure. So the way to do that is to make topic sentences which deal with each one of these things in closer detail. The preparation step, this would be the first topic sentence, right, involves procuring the ingredients and preparing the space for cooking. All right, that's pretty cut and dry, man. I mean, it could be a little more specific, but we'll take it. That's a good topic sentence. What's our next topic sentence? You mean you go on to the next topic sentence? Yes. Go ahead and get it out of the way. Cooking step. The cooking step can be carried out with either a microwave or a stove. And depending on preference, certain modifications can be made to achieve desired results. Again, we could be a little bit more specific about that. It's easier when I can talk to you all and you tell me how you want to cook ramen, but I have to be kind of general since it's so broad. Okay, and then the last one is the serving step. So the serving step is perhaps the most versatile step, as the ramen can be altered and or presented in a multitude of ways, making it one of the most dynamic foods on the market. Boom. Okay, so we got our 3 topic sentences. Perfect. Now we got to go in and fill in those supporting details. Okay. Preparation step involves procuring the ingredients and preparing the space for cooking. First, remember those transitions that go with the chronology, you will need a microwavable bowl. Microwavable bowl. Preferably one made out of ceramic or some other heat-tolerant material. Next, remove the noodles. Next, you will need to select a noodle packet with the seasoning of your choice. Seasoning options include, what are they? Beef, chicken, shrimp, and roasted ostrich. Cool. No, they don't have. I'm sorry, that's not right. What do they have? What's another? I don't even know another flavor. I'm trying to think of one. Chicken, shrimp, and original flavor. We'll just call it. We'll just say original flavor. I don't know what if they have an original flavor. I don't know. All right. So you got to select those different seasoning options. Seasoning options have a similar base, but variations include, in flavor include, that's kind of awkward. That's a little bit awkward, whatever. You guys get the picture, right? As long as the picture is received. I could spend 2 hours making this the greatest ramen noodles essay ever, but let's not. Okay. So once selected, place the noodle block into the bowl and fill with just enough water to submerge the noodles completely. Once the water and the noodles are positioned, you are ready for the cooking step. Now that's your transition. Remember, this is going to be a short essay, okay? Yours is supposed to be a little bit longer, but we're just doing this as an example. So once the water and the noodles are positioned, you are ready for the cooking step. That is a transition sentence, right? That's preparing me for the next body paragraph, which is right here. The cooking step can be carried out with either a microwave or a stovetop, and depending on preference, certain modifications can be made to achieve desired results. All right. If using a microwave, you may cook the noodles between 3 and 4 minutes, depending on how you like. Oh my gosh, what have I done? What have I done? There. Oh goodness, no. Oh no. What have I done? All right, let's back it up. I've screwed everything up here. All right, hold on. Wait. There we go. You may cook the noodles to 3 and 4 minutes to achieve the desired consistency. Depending on how saturated with flavor you like your noodles to be, you may want to place the seasoning packet in before cooking the noodles, as this will cause the noodles to absorb some of the seasoning. I don't know if that's real. We're just going to say that. Okay. Let's see. Once the cooking is complete, you may remove the noodles, taking care not to scald your flesh on the searing hot water. And you are ready for the final step. Serving. All right. Again, these are kind of short paragraphs. I like your paragraphs to be close to half a page each, maybe a third page each in certain circumstances. 2.5 paragraphs per page might be okay. But I don't like them to be real short or real long. So if you're wondering, that's the answer. All right, so that gives us on to the next thing. The serving step is perhaps the most versatile step, as the ramen can be altered or presented in a multitude of ways, making it one of the most dynamic foods on the market. Okay, so there are many ways that one can doctor their noodles. The use of herbs such as cilantro or green onion is popular with some, whereas others prefer a nice chili oil or a squirt of lime juice to give their meal a bit more pizzazz. Is that a word? Pizzazz. It is a word, isn't it? Oh, it's pizzazz. I didn't even know how to say that. Pizzazz. Okay. Now you know. You learn something new every day. Okay. A bit more pizzazz. You know, I do want to point out this is actually colloquial speech, meaning this is something that you would say like in conversation with a friend or just kind of like, you know, you wouldn't say this if you're trying to be as formal as possible. So maybe kind of avoid these words if you can. It's just what came to mind. I also like to have a little bit of fun with this. So, okay. It does say it's informal. I've looked up the word. It says pizzazz informal. So if ever you look up the definition of a word and you find that it is informal, that is usually a indicator that you probably should avoid it. But we're going to leave it in there because it's a fun word. Yeah. And if you don't know it, now you do. Okay. So in addition, you may choose to add a protein to the mix in order to make the dish a bit more substantial. Some people like hard-boiled eggs, whereas others prefer a meat such as chicken or crab. Let's say crab. That's what came to mind. Vegetarians may opt to increase the nutrition value by adding tofu or some comparable plant-based protein to the meal. Lastly, you may choose from a myriad of sauces with which to enhance your dining experience. All in all, the customizable nature of ramen means the possibilities are literally endless. All right, then we need a conclusion paragraph. Now that you know how to make ramen properly, you can ensure that you never have another hungry night in your dorm room. All you need is 50 cents and a working microwave, and you too can become a master chef of these let's fix this real quick. Wonderful noodles. As you near closer and closer to graduation, you will also become the Iron Chef of the noodle world. As the skills you have acquired in your dormitory kitchen are sure to make you an expert. Won't you try some delicious top ramen today? Question mark. Okay, and we're just going to end that one at that. So here we go. We got 5 paragraphs. We don't quite have the word count. We're a little bit short. So if you were in this situation, you'd be like, how do I make it longer? And I would say if you ever do get in that situation, try not to make it really wordy, right? But overall, this is pretty much what I'm looking for the first essay. I mean, depending on your strategy, you know, you're basically going to be doing the same thing. Thesis, topic, sentences, laying it all out. So hopefully that makes it clear. I am going to do one little exercise here with, I'm getting hoarse is the problem. I want to keep going, but I had a 2-hour class earlier today, and so this would make it over 3 hours of talking. And if you've ever done that, you know that it can tire you out pretty quickly. So what I am going to do is just walk you through a potential breakdown. For the thing about narration is tough because when we tell stories, a lot of times we don't do it in a very organized way. We do it in sort of a stream of consciousness way, and we just kind of rattle off the details of the story as they come to us. But really the best way to deal with narration is to stop and think about the steps and the important pivotal moments as they happened in sequence. So I'm going to talk, let's see, let me pick a story. I'm trying to think of a story that's interesting in my own personal life. Story. The time my childhood friend lanced a hornet's nest with sharpened stick. Okay. This is a true story, everyone. I had a friend when I was a kid, and he was a big nature enthusiast, and so am I. I'm really big into nature. And he had a nature collection. He would collect different things, and one of the things that he wanted was one of those big paper hornet's nests. Have you ever seen them? These big gray nests, sort of, you know, weird shaped sort of nests hanging from trees. And he saw one day in our neighbor's yard, and he was trying to devise a way that he could get it for his collection without getting stung. And so he reasoned that if he created a long enough lance he would be able to lance the hornets, but they would be too far away to sting him. And then he could bring the hornet's nest to the ground and leave it there and then come back and get it later. That was his plan. Okay, so I'm going to try to figure out a way to break down this story. Obviously, we could start with a hook, right? What's our hook? Imagine being completely covered in a swarm of angry hornets while you scream helplessly and run across the yard. All of this could have been avoided if you had just bothered to study the creatures you were meddling with. But you didn't, and now you're paying the price. Far from being fantasy, this exact thing happened to my childhood friend, and we're going to make up a name here to protect the guilty. Clive Dorbenson. All right, that was his name. It's not his real name, but okay. Imagine being completely covered in a swarm of angry hornets while you scream helplessly and run across the yard. Do I have your attention, ladies and gentlemen? I hope I do. So that's a good way to start the hook. All right, contextual information. Well, what are these hornets? What do we need to know? While many young children may think they are invincible, few are a match for the white-faced, I think that's what they're called, white-faced paper hornets. That's what we always call them. I don't know if that's a common name or not. While many young children think they are invincible, few are a match for the white-faced paper hornets. These colony insects pack some of the nastiest stings in the animal kingdom. And they are not afraid to use their skills. Yeah. What else? What other context? They range from, we'll just make this up, from coastal Florida to the Rocky Mountains, leaving a painful trail of impression on the animals that cohabitate near them. Okay, so that's good for context. Now let's come up with a thesis statement. Let's see, I'm trying to think of a way to put this, because it gets tricky. Sometimes you got to spend time. The thesis statement isn't always going to come spilling out of your head. Unfortunately, my friend Clive Dorbenson was one of the unfortunate victims, but not by accident. It was his own stupidity that led him to be covered in these horrible insects. The stinging of Clive Dorbenson, this is the thesis, Third, stinging of Clive Dormanson came about in 3 phases. Planning phase, the execution, and the agonizing regret. All right, so there is my thesis statement. The stinging of Clive Dormanson came about in 3 phases: the planning phase, the execution phase, and the phase of agonizing regret. All right, so what do you notice about my thesis statement? I have it stratified to where there are steps, right? We know how this is going to go, okay? So you see, we're just doing the same thing, right? We're just using a different strategy. Instead of it being process, it's narration. Important to note that both of these strategies are best served by a chronological progression, meaning a progression in order, although you don't have to do that with narration. Narration, you can do things out of order if you want to achieve that effect of like confusing your reader, and sometimes people do want to do that. But if you try to do that with a process essay, people are going to make things in a backwards way, and it's not going to work, right? Okay. It all began when Clive decided to use a sharpened stick to capture a hornet's nest. Presumably, he thought, without being stung. Let's try that again. Use a sharpened stick to capture a hornet's nest without, he thought, being stung by the beasts. All right, that's a good, we'll say the planning phase began. That way we can reference the thesis directly, right? The planning phase began when Clive decided to use a sharpened stick to capture a hornet's nest without, he thought, being stung by the beasts. Okay, cool. So that's the first topic sentence. What's the next topic sentence? It's not liking the, I think it thinks the, oh, there we go. Yeah, possessive. Okay. Next topic sentence. However, once Clive had lanced the nest, things got way out of hand. That's a little bit colloquial. Things got out of his control. And he quickly realized that the execution phase was not going according to plan. Okay, so again, we reference the execution phase to make it tie back to the thesis. That's our second one. All right, final topic sentence. Unfortunately, the phase of agonizing regret came all too soon for Mr. Dormanson, as he was quickly assailed by over 20 of the stinging insects. All right, so I think you guys see where I'm going. I mean, I could sit here and write out this entire essay, but I think you guys see where I'm going. I've got the intro, I've got hook, line, and sinker. I just did 3 topic sentences. This is the order in which I'm supposed to do things. The next step would be to do the supporting details and tell the story, and then provide a conclusion which doesn't repeat itself, right, if you'll remember correctly. The one thing about this, you are allowed in the narration strategy to use the first person I, especially if you personally were in the story. And I watched him do this. And I will tell you guys the story real quick. So he sharpened the stick. He thought he was going to get the hornets. He ran from one end of these people's yard with the stick out in front of him, and he lanced the nest. The stick went through the nest, and a black cloud of these insects erupted from the nest and covered my friend. And I was standing across the street, and I had tried several times to talk him out of doing this, but he didn't listen to me, and he probably should have. So this is a true story. It really happened. I could tell this story in narrative form, and I would use the first person I because I was present. But remember, not all stories really did happen. Some stories are fabricated. They're fictional. So you could make up a story if you wanted, in which case you wouldn't use the first person I unless you were the narrator of that story, right? So anyway, I'm just showing you this is what's expected. You're going to make the thesis, the topic sentences. You're going to fill in the paragraphs. You're going to get those transition sentences at the end of the body paragraphs. You're going to come up with a conclusion that finishes the story off. I'm just going to leave it at that because, to be honest with you guys, I'm losing my voice right now, and I would keep going, but I think you get the picture. If you don't, you can shoot me an email. We will continue to practice these strategies as time goes on. And next week, I'll have even more for you regarding those strategies. So what is due this week? We have discussion 1 due Sunday, compare and contrast quiz due Sunday, cause and effect quiz due Sunday, and classification quiz due Sunday. Please remember, read the study materials before you take the quiz. Please remember that you will only get 1 attempt on these. Also, don't refresh the page or close out or do any of that stuff because I can't tell if you're doing that to try to go back and look at the materials or not. So you need to just, once you sit down to take the quiz, you're in. You got to take it, okay? And that's what's due this week. Next week, we will practice. We'll do some stuff on wordiness, word variants, and then I'm going to practice the rest of those strategies with you. I don't have that listed on the syllabus. I forgot to put it there. But we're going to practice compare and contrast, cause and effect, and classification and division for next week's lecture. Please tell me if you need any help picking a topic for the essay. The essay is due on June 20th at 11:59. That's closer than we'd like. That's less than 2 weeks. So you should be picking a topic. You should be picking a strategy. You should get a thesis and topic sentences laid out, then do your hook, line, and sinker, do your supporting details for your topic sentences and your transitions, then write that conclusion paragraph. Make sure your stuff is in MLA. When I grade the essay, it'll be graded, there are 5 categories. 20% goes to requirements met. Did you answer the assignment prompt correctly? Did you do everything I asked you to do? 20% is organization. Is the thesis there? Is the hook there? Is the line there? Are the topic sentences there? Do you have supporting details? Do you have a strong conclusion? Is it organized correctly? Then the next thing is development and support. Is your wording well? Did you express yourself clearly? Did you use proper tone, right? These are things that I'll ask myself. And then there comes punctuation and grammar, right? The big humdrum, right? That's 20%. And then the final 20% is MLA formatting. So you're going to want to make sure that you check that MLA and make sure that you check it personally and don't rely too much on the citation machines and stuff because a lot of the times those don't do what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to leave it at that because I've lost my voice. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to reach out by email. If I didn't answer your email over the weekend, it's because actually I was stung by yellow jackets and had an allergic reaction over the weekend. So that's probably why I was writing this story about my friend when I was a kid because that's fresh on my mind. So I was kind of, taking a lot of Benadryl and stuff to try to get over that allergic reaction. I wasn't the best about answering my email. I'm going to check those emails now, make sure I've reached out to you. But if I haven't, just shoot me a reminder. And I hope you guys have an excellent week. See you next time.